Hello, and welcome back to Exa Talks, a show about real people and real life. Today, we're going to talk about the one thing you should never talk about: politics. We're not necessarily going to dive into all the hot button issues that are facing us today, but rather how to approach the topic with people who disagree with you. As a disclaimer, I do think it's important to mention that we are two white people and that our opinions and experiences reflect that. I have to admit, I'm a little nervous about this one. I'm joined today with my friend of over 10 years, well, technically longer, and she's about the only person I've kept in my life who doesn't always agree with me politically. And I admit I am someone who creates a bubble for myself in my personal life and on social media, and I enjoy it. Please welcome Danielle to the show.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Hi, I'm so excited to have you on the show. I think, too, in this day and age, it's like controversial to be friends with people with different political beliefs. Like, you can actually get canceled in some cases over that. But more on that later. Before we get started, let's talk a little bit about our friendship.
Yes.
So we had a long discussion yesterday. We've known each other since kindergarten. We went to the same school, but we really didn't become friends until high school.
Yeah, which is really weird because we grew up right up the street from each other, like on the same street.
I wasn't the greatest person in elementary, middle school, in my opinion. I mean, like, who is? But, like, I was, like, really annoying. But it wasn't until high school where I started to really, like, come into my own and be respectful of people. And we became friends. You live right down the street from me. And you drove me to school and all that kind of stuff. We listened to Taylor Swift.
Yes.
So it really was funny. Like, I would say, I don't know, 10th, 11th grade, in chemistry class especially, we really started to become friends. And we've been really good friends ever since. So it's just funny how life works sometimes. So do you remember the first time politics came into our friendship?
Oh, for sure. The first time politics really came in was during the end of the Obama administration and the beginning of the 2016 election.
Should we tell that story?
can.
How do you remember that story?
I think it was mostly around the Hillary Clinton scandal. I remember sitting in your house, in your living room, and we were, like, heated debating over, like, why you shouldn't just vote for someone because you don't like the other person and that kind of thing.
So just to talk a little bit about that election specifically, as soon as Trump, and I just, as a disclaimer, we're not going to get super political, but it's just, we're kind of laying groundwork here.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of the first time I realized we had different political views, I was having a really bad day and I was really upset. So I was like, can you come over? I'm feeling really down. And then you came over.
And it turned into a political discussion.
And we fought, and then I cried. I think when Trump announced his presidency, I was just like, this is like a joke. And like, I was like, this can't possibly be, but he just kept like winning, getting further and further and further. So I think I said to you, I'm like, there's no way he's going to win. And you're like, well, he could. And then like, that's what started it.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, hang tight. We're going to get into all of that. Let's just start talking about politics in general. What does politics mean to you? And in your opinion, what is the legacy of politics in this country?
So for a long time, politics didn't really mean much to me. Like, even when I was old enough to vote, it wasn't a big deal. I just thought it was like old people stuff and you just had to vote because you're old enough to, and it was nothing important. But now that I'm older, I see a lot of how politics can really affect my life and the other people that I care about, their lives as well. And politics really are the backbone of this country. It affects so many different people, so many different aspects. There's just so much that rides on politics that we really should be paying attention to that stuff.
I'm a history teacher and I have a degree in history. So this question to me, I think, is like omnipresent throughout history. Even the very foundation of this country, was political. In my head, I kind of divert or separate politics into two categories, like historical politics and like the politics of today. They like might be the same thing, but I just don't characterize them like that in my head. I think definitely, like you were saying, when as a younger person, I wasn't really in tune to politics, but as I got older and I learned more of the history of this country, I became more in tune to like what affects this country, changes, policies, all that kind of stuff. And as a teacher, I've noticed that young people today are like way more into politics than we ever were, and they know things, and good for them. So in your opinion, what are the misconceptions of politics and how do they create such a divide in this country? I think when some people like hear the word politics, they automatically like turn off or they automatically get these bad thoughts. So talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah, to talk about those bad thoughts and whatnot, that is mostly over the controversy between parties. They think that politics always turns into a fight or debate, and it doesn't have to be that way. But I think the biggest misconception is that you have to pick a political party and you have to align with that party 100% all of the time. Also, the way that the political parties are portrayed can be super misleading. Like, they scare people away, they only show the bad side of certain things, and it's hard to find someone that you truly align with. You know, just because you vote for someone doesn't mean you agree with everything they stand for. That's just an impossible standard to hold people to.
So I think I agree with George Washington in his farewell address when he said, stay away from two-party politics.
Mm-hmm.
And we immediately didn't listen to him. We created political parties. I am a little upset sometimes that we are forced into a box and we're forced to pick sides because, as you said, I don't feel like my side always represents me completely. And at the end of the day, we only get two presidential candidates. When you vote for a president, you may not agree with every single thing that they do, but we are kind of brought to that point of voting for someone. So tell me about politics in your family, how you were raised.
Yeah, for sure. My political party affiliation, it really does fall onto what my parents believed in, especially right out the gate. Like, you know, when you sign up to vote, you have to pick a party and you just pick what your parents pick because you're young and you don't know anything.
Right.
But it really wasn't huge in my family. Like, my dad was not huge on voting. I don't even know how many times he's actually voted as a person. Like, I don't know if he just takes the lazy way out and doesn't do it. But my mom always voted, and sometimes she would bring me with her and basically instill that it's important to vote. You know, that's our right, and we should express that and be able to choose who we want. But it really wasn't a big discussion all the time in my family. Like, my grandpa sits and watches the news on TV, and he gets political, but it wasn't forced upon me, and I was never pressured to be part of a particular party.
The 2016 election gets the reputation of making unpolitical people political.
Oh, for
sure. Have you noticed that?
Yeah, my dad is example one. The guy hasn't voted in so long. In that 2016 election, he was out there. He was learning about certain things in politics. He was voting. He was expressing his feelings about politics, which I thought was really good. Like, to see him get involved in that, it's an important thing for everybody to know a little bit on, at least.
Yeah.
And try to research, especially if you're going to vote. You know, don't vote if you're not going to research your candidate or the party or what you want.
Right. Politics was never a discussion in my home, or like opinions on issues, economics, civil rights. It just, in my experience, my family was like a little more complacent, like anything goes, whoever we get, and that kind of thing. What happened to me was I guess I became like politicized, if you will, in college as I started to learn more with my history degree, and I definitely was left leaning. And what happened was I like brought my family on a journey with me. Like, I showed my mom the movie Iron Jawed Angels that we watched in high school. I love that movie. And she was like, I never realized the struggles and the sacrifices women made to get the right to vote. And that became something that was very important to her. I was raised almost exclusively in a family full of women. I call them like the Amazons. So it was my grandmother, my mom, my aunts. I had like two prominent male figures in my life, my uncle and my dad. But mostly as I grew in my education, I found that women are discriminated against, historically still fighting for rights, and it became important to me to fight for my family, who was majority women. So that's how I kind of became politicized, and my family kind of followed suit. Most of, if not all of my family were registered Republicans, but I know at least one of my family members changed and registered as a Democrat. One of my family members was on board with Trump until she heard some things that she didn't like, and then she, switched. So I'm kind of proud of the fact that I've done a lot of educating for my family, and we all are politicized now, but I think I championed it a little bit. My dad's side is definitely like more right-leaning. So can I ask how you identify politically?
Yeah, I am proudly a Republican.
So I think it's interesting that you say proudly. I am a Democrat. I am not proudly a Democrat.
That's okay.
And I guess we'll talk more about that. I identify as a Democrat, but I don't identify with the politicians leading our country. In my personal opinion, they are the wealthy elite. And we've agreed that running for president is a money race. When you run out of money, you drop out of the race. And in my opinion, as long as someone wealthy is in office, they will never represent me, the middle, working class, and even lower classes. I've kind of stopped judging people and categorizing people as Democrat and Republican. I've turned to for human rights and against human rights. I know some Republicans that are amazing people. They would never turn away anyone hungry. They would never turn away anyone in need. I think most of us can agree that we want more rights. We don't want to take away rights. There are people in this country who want to take away rights from LGBT folks. Even, let's just go with the gun argument. There are some people that want to get rid of guns, right? So that I don't consider, you could be a Republican or a Democrat, but are you for human rights or are you against human rights? That's what I'm kind of more concerned about. So I kind of judge people on that basis. You can say you're a Republican, and I will admit I have my biases when I hear that, but when you get to know someone, you can't judge everything based on that.
Absolutely.
Have you lost any family or friends because of differences in political opinions? Have politics changed how you view certain family or friends?
Gotcha. I wouldn't say that I've lost them. As you know, we get in pretty heated discussions, probably
Yes.
more heated than any other person that I talk to, and we're still best friends without question. But I definitely have started unfollowing people on social media, mostly because they just blindly post things without doing the research and without forming their own opinion. They just follow, the headlines, and that I cannot get on board with. People need to be doing their research. I do not respect the people that just post stuff to get a rise out of people or get likes on social media. If you want to educate others, you need to educate yourself first.
I'm very guilty. I don't want anyone listening to misunderstand. I am not holier than thou. I totally I changed the 2016 election. I became very skeptical of people with different opinions than me, and I have made false assumptions that if you say you are for Trump, you are against me as a person. To some extent, I'm still parsing with that. I am saying all this because I have deleted a lot of people off of social media. There was even this one thing where you could click a link and see who liked Trump's page. And I was like, oh. And it almost feels like you almost kind of have to come out of the closet as a Trump supporter. That's something that is going to get you a lot of reactions, let's just say. They could be positive or negative, but I think it's shocking. I definitely went through the people in my life who were Trump supporters. I was like, oh my God. So I have gotten rid of people in my life. And as I said in the beginning of this, I do form a bubble around myself, which is why I wanted to make this episode and why I think it's important to understand how to maintain relationships with people who disagree politically. But let's talk about you. So you voted for Trump twice. So we're not going to go into too much detail because you and I have many conversations and arguments about him. I think most people have a stereotypical idea in mind when they think of a Trump voter. They think of a racist white man in a MAGA hat, for the uninitiated, which I can't imagine you are at this point, that is, make America great again. Through our conversations, I've known you to break many of the Trump voter stereotypes. You've told me you acknowledge that group exists, and they're quite loud, they're quite vocal. But can you share a little bit about how you are different from a typical, quote, Trump voter, unquote, and also how you don't feel those maggots, so to speak, represent you?
Yeah, there's always going to be extremists on either side of the political party line. And typically they get the most attention because they are loud, they are obnoxious, they're putting everything out there in your face and trying to use their political views to hurt you or make you feel bad about yourself. And that's not the type of person that I am. As far as breaking the mold, I'm a woman. I'm also part of the LGBTQ community. And I'm not super vocal when it comes to politics. I don't post on social media. I don't go to rallies. I don't march in anything. And it's not because I don't want to support that. Of course I do. I just think I can support it better by learning about things, voting for, the people that I've learned about, and just making sure that my decisions politically are educated and not just because I'm following the loud crowd and I want, this, that, and the other thing, and the other group sucks. I don't want to be that person. So I'm not like that. I'm also I didn't vote for Trump because he was loud and obnoxious and in your face and saying mean things on Twitter and didn't give an F. That's not what I wanted to represent. I voted for him because I wanted America to focus on itself, and that's what he was for. I agreed on his agenda for affordable and available education. I aligned with his economic policy, his border security policy, and his healthcare policy. Those are the things that I'm looking at. I don't care about the tweets. I don't care about what he's saying to other people, that kind of thing. I care about what is the paper, what's out there.
You're saying actions speak louder than words. And you've said that to me before. You're like, we're upset about what he's saying, maybe rightfully so, but that is causing us to ignore what he's doing.
Correct.
Do you own any Trump merchandise?
No.
And I give you props for that. I don't know that you need that. I don't know if anyone needs props for that, but I think one of my problems was like the merchandising of his presidency and his campaign. But I think I respect that you are not in everyone's face on social media. I think I am sometimes. I think I'm in everyone's face sometimes on social media. And we're going to talk about how I've made outlandish claims and all that kind of stuff. But I've always respected how you didn't wear the hats, you didn't wear the shirts. It made me feel safe around you as a Trump voter. And again, I'm not saying that wearing those things and having those things is necessarily bad. That's just how I feel. But I respect you for being firm in your beliefs and not shoving them down anyone else's throats. I think that's admirable. How would you say those people, the hat wearers, the ralliers, how did they hurt Trump's presidency or his image?
I think mostly because the people that were the loud, obnoxious people that weren't doing their research, they just liked that, Trump was wild and different and that kind of thing. They were the ones that started, wearing those items. And it kind of put a damper on the people that actually educated themselves and didn't align with some of those views that wanted to support a president and wanted to wear those things. They got that bad name from those loud people that were doing things that most of the people that I know that voted for Trump don't really align with. They don't agree with that. They voted for him for different reasons, not because of all of those things and not because they're toting guns around and laughing at people and making fun. Like, they're genuinely concerned about the status of this country and how our economic policy, again, border policy, those types of things.
I want to talk about Make America Great Again because a lot of people have a problem with what it's become. But let's talk about the actual message. What does Make America Great Again mean to you, and do you agree with that message?
To me, it means that America needs to focus on itself. We need to stop outsourcing a lot of our fossil fuels. We want to be energy independent instead of dependent. We need to work on the problems that we have internally before we reach out to these other countries and, start assisting there. Obviously, we have to do some outreach, just, make the world a happy place. But I think American jobs, American-made goods, those things are what a lot of Republicans do want. And I'm sure some Democrats do too. It's not just a political party basis. And that's what I really believe Make America Great Again means. Unfortunately, it's got a sour taste in its mouth from some people that, turned it into more of a political statement rather than tagline for something that we really want.
I totally get that there was a time in this country where everything was American made and it provided American jobs. And I talk about this in school, how we have outsourced all of those things because it's cheaper. There is no such thing as minimum wage in China. There's no such thing as minimum wage in India. And at the end of the day, there was a study done where this college listed 2 identical zip-up hoodie sweatshirts, completely identical. And they made it known that one was made overseas and it was $20, and the other one was made in America and it was $40. The one overseas overwhelmingly outsold the American one. So it's tough that we have this, we want to bring American jobs back. We want American goods to be made. They are going to be more expensive because you have to pay American workers more. Now, we're not going to get into the rich corporations that can afford it anyway without raising costs. But people overwhelmingly voice that they don't want to pay more for goods. In that respect, when we consider that throughout American history, we were very self-sufficient, we were making everything here, and I quite think we're overdue for another industrial revolution. We need to industrialize and modernize our roads and bridges and all that kind of stuff, our factories. In that respect, I can understand the Make America Great Again argument. Where people on my side take issue is with minority rights. And we may disagree on this. There are some minorities who believe that their rights were lessened during Trump's presidency. Some of the people who tout Make America Great Again may very well be referring to a time where Black people had less rights or gay people had less rights. In that respect, historically, I understand the meaning, and then socially, I understand the backlash. And like you said, I think when people wear all the stuff and the flags and are loud and obnoxious, it buries the meaning. And I only think of the red hats. I don't think about the message. So, as we said before about maybe how that hurt the movement a little bit. Who do you think is more critical of their own party, Democrats or Republicans?
This one's tough to say, but I think there's a bigger generational divide among Democrats, which kind of makes them more critical of each other. For instance, Democrats that were our parents' age or our parents' age, they're not part of that cancel culture. They're not part of the loud on social media group, and they actually tend to fall victim to cancel culture, regardless of their political party.
I think one of the known strengths of the Republican Party in this country is most of the time they are all together. They are all going to vote the same way no matter what. And Democrats always play this game of we want to be more progressive, but we also want to be moderate because let's face it, we've never had any of the crazy liberal changes that people have want to make because they're not going to get elected, they're not going to get voted in. So that is, as a Democrat, it's always like, the Republicans are going to be solid because the Democratic Party is always split. And then there's the third party. As far as cancel culture goes, I definitely think, and we're not going to get too much into it yet, but Democrats are way more critical of our own party. I'll just say I voted for Joe Biden because my number one pick for this election, Elizabeth Warren, did not make it. So he was not my top choice. He's done some things that I don't agree with, but at the end of the day, we only have two to pick from. So, it's funny because with the Trump thing, there was always people on social media being like, God bless Trump, God bless this country and that. I've seen it with Biden too. I haven't seen it as much as Biden because a lot of us Democrats are like, all right, like you said you were going to cancel the student loan debt. Let's see it. If you said you were going to do that. The biggest BS thing that Democrats feel about Joe Biden winning the presidency is how they said they were going to give $2,000 to every American. And what that meant was finishing the $2,000 from Trump's $1,400. We got $600 extra dollars. And we were all like, whoa, wait a second. That's BS. Because you said, So I think voting for a president because of his promises, I am seeing the unfolding of, hey, promises aren't always kept.
Yeah.
As we talked about, I don't think we as Democrats are ever 100% happy with our picks. Would you say you're 100% happy with Trump winning the primaries?
No, I mean, there's always multiple people in the primaries that you want to win, but it does come down to a money race and a popularity contest, and money really does speak to that. I have to align with who I agree with the most, when we get there. Like, again, with Trump, his policies were good enough for me to be voting for him. I felt strongly about that. I did feel strongly that he would make and keep his promises, and he did a lot of that during his presidency. What he spoke about got kept, but it's always a game that we play that you got to choose ultimately one person. Even the nomination process is a little difficult you don't have a big pool at that point either. So I just really hope people vote for the people that they align with on their policies more so than personality. I think that's going to speak louder to what ends up happening when they're in that presidential seat. And I hope they do their research and it's not just, okay, well, I have to vote for a Democrat because I'm a Democrat. I hope they do look at, the other side. And the same thing with Republicans. I hope they don't feel like they have to vote Republican just because, that's their party. They should really look into all candidates and do a pros and cons list, really.
How do you feel about the lesser of two evils argument? Because I feel like, in my personal opinion, this is completely unresearched and not proven. I don't know that Trump would have won in 2016 if he wasn't against Hillary. I think people hated both candidates so much. I've known Democrats that voted for Trump because they could not stand Hillary. When it comes to the lesser of two evils argument, what is your opinion on that?
It's tough. I really hope that people don't just vote blindly for somebody because they don't like the other person. Obviously, that's the point of an election. You don't like the other candidate and you like your candidate better. But I hope it wasn't just solely based on not liking the other candidate. I really hope they looked into, what their policies are. Could they live with it? If there's something that either party really is against and you strongly believe in it, then you should vote for, a third party or something that's not in that realm. Even though you may think your vote doesn't matter because that person's not going to get selected anyway, it'll make you feel good about yourself and make you feel a little bit better about, who does get selected and if you truly just help that person get into place because you didn't like the other or, that type of thing.
One thing I want to talk about is because, we're talking about who's more critical of their party. Democrats aren't always 100% happy with our picks. I felt that there was a certain worshiping of Trump during his presidency that under no circumstance would people give him any criticism for anything. And I want to kind of toot the Democrat horn a little bit when it comes to Andrew Cuomo, the former governor of New York. And I think people forget that teachers hated Cuomo first. We were cool. We were the cool ones. We didn't like Cuomo first because he wanted to make it so if teachers failed their certification exams one time, they couldn't become teachers. Meanwhile, he failed his bar exam like 3 times. So I just want to say that we were out of the gate. Teachers were not a fan of Cuomo. Fast forward to the pandemic. People will disagree with me on this. I personally was very happy with Cuomo's leadership during the pandemic. That is my personal opinion. I liked the daily updates. I liked the communication. And I was like, you know what? He sucked at the teacher aspect, and he probably still does, but I really liked how he was handling the pandemic. Then the allegations of his sexual assaults come out. I never thought for a second that I would continue supporting him after that. It was very clear, sexual assault and support. I think a lot of Democrats were that way. So I cannot speak from the right perspective. From the left perspective, we are actively critical of our politicians that represent us. In your opinion, have you seen people on the right critical of Trump and his policies?
Absolutely. Mostly it's the personality side of it. Policy-wise, if you look back before the pandemic, our country was booming. Our economy was good. Stock market was good. There were more jobs to America. Things were getting done. There wasn't much for people to pick apart as far as that aspect. When things are good, we don't have anything bad to say. But I think a lot of people like myself put up with, some of his antics and whatnot because of the policies that were going well. So it's tough to say, well, I don't like how he said this, but, I really like what's going on, and be vocally critical about that. It's tough to be, it's really easy to be critical when things are going bad. Like,
right.
It's so easy to pick apart somebody when the economy's not good, you're in a pandemic,
right.
That kind of stuff. And that's what happened towards the end of his, presidency. And that ultimately, I think, why the election went sour.
I think it goes without saying that Democrats did not feel that he was so great, just because if they did, he would have been elected again. For me, and I just want to say, and again, I said we're not going to debate, but you kind of are blind to the economic prosperity of a country when you feel that socially things are suffering as far as treatment of minorities, which on a large legal scale may not have been as severe. I worry that some supporters of his felt empowered to discriminate. That was a big criticism, that all of these haters, quote unquote, were able to come out and be openly hateful. So I did see suffering of minorities, and when you see that, you're like, well, okay, great, the economy's going really well, but like someone's getting shot on the street.
I mean, and that still happens today.
Right.
I mean, regardless of who's, in charge, things are going to happen that way. And unfortunately, people tend to point the finger, or they did at the time, to Trump on almost false claims. If you look at some of his policies, like the education, the affordable education and available education, that was all minority based. That was all for minorities to have affordable, available education in these cities that didn't have that option in those places. And that was all minority based. And then to hear people come out and say, like, well, Trump hated the minorities, it's like, did you look at the policies, or did you just like think because he is loud on Twitter that, he doesn't like that stuff, or he's against, minorities and that kind of thing?
You made a good point, and you said that stuff is still going on. Racially motivated crimes, sexually motivated crimes, that kind of thing. And I think it made me realize that I may care less about economic policies than I do about social policies, because, and I think maybe that's a distinction between Republicans and Democrats. I've always known Republicans to be like, I want to make sure our economy's good. And I've always known Democrats to be like, I want to make sure we are protected.
Yeah, and I feel that. I definitely do feel that, that's the way things are kind of set between the parties. But I also do believe that if you're helping the economy, everybody's benefiting from that. And that takes away some of the social tensions, hopefully. When people have available jobs and affordable items, affordable healthcare, those crime rates seem to not be as big, as loud, as in your face, because it sets a tone socially. Like, if you have, money and you're feeling good, your mood changes. Same thing if you're scraping the bottom of the barrel cash-wise and you have a lot of debt, it's stressful and causes people to do some crazy stuff.
And I think, as I said, like maybe Democrats lean more towards social and Republicans lean more towards economic. I don't think either side, well, hopefully would say like, I don't want this country to do well economically. Like, no Democrat is saying that. We all want this country to do well economically. And I would hope that Republicans would say, I don't want anyone to hurt because of their
absolutely
sexual orientation, skin color, religion, etc. All right, so let's step away from presidential politics and talk about some differences in other politics that you and I have. Interestingly enough, through our yelling at each other and debating, we usually seem to be saying the same things, just the way we get there and the solutions we have in mind are different. I want to say, when it comes to gun control, you have taught me a lot. You are a hunter and you follow the rules. You've mentioned that when people break gun laws, it makes things more difficult for you as a responsible gun owner. I'm a teacher and I'm very afraid of gun violence in this country. And I see on my memories, I have said what I think now are embarrassing things about gun control. So I'm one of those people. You're the kind of person, you hunt to eat. Like, you could live without, and that's, I think, very respectable. If you want to go out and hunt your own food, there's nothing more primal to human existence and survival than that. So I have a lot of respect for you. Maybe part of it is protection, but you're like, I hunt and I eat what I kill. Like, that is your thing. So I respect you a lot, and I've posted a lot of Facebook statuses in the past about banning AR-15s and such, and you explained to me that an AR-15 is not just one type of gun. And for people who are anti-gun who are listening and may not know a lot about guns, how can you educate us?
Yeah, a lot of people think that AR means assault rifle. That's not the case. AR stands for Armalite rifle. It's a style of gun, and AR-15s can come in many sizes, many options. You can add things to them, take away things to them. It's semi-automatic, so it's not even really classified as an assault weapon, which people tend to see an AR-15 and they're like, oh, that's a big scary gun. That should be illegal. That's what kills all the people. And it's a big thing we have to differentiate the dangerous guns and the dangerous people. There's a big difference. Guns don't kill people, people kill people. So you put a gun in the hand of a good person and they can be like me and go hunting and do something that's a hobby, a skill, something that you can hone, something that's very rewarding. Or you can put it in the hands of someone who's going to go commit a crime or hurt people. And that's huge. A lot of people think that if you have a gun in your hand, you're going to hurt people. And that's not the case.
I have a little problem with the rhetoric. People kill people, guns don't kill people. But I will say that you have said that people who do bad things with guns hurt you and your rights. Do you want to say a little bit on that?
Yeah, it makes, the stricter the gun laws get because of these bad people doing bad things with guns, the harder it is for me and the people like me to go hunting and to enjoy guns in a safe manner. And even the people that don't hunt, that just like to shoot guns as a hobby in a safe way, they're hurting. A lot of the weapons that are, being classified as bad weapons, scary weapons, we need to hone in on that. Semi-automatic weapons. People don't like those. My shotgun that I use for duck hunting is a semi-automatic weapon. It shoots 3 rounds, semi-automatic. And people want to cancel that stuff. They want to get rid of those guns sometimes. And I just don't see the point in honing in on a specific style or whatnot, because the bad people are going to find guns regardless of if you put a law around them. They're going to go commit a crime. They're not going to care about how they get a gun. So it's tough.
We have talked about a solution. And I don't mean to toot my own horn here, but one of the things I said to you one time, because we've had a lot of debates and you've said, I don't know what the solution is. And I have solutions. Maybe they're not good. Maybe they're not practical. Maybe they're not feasible. But my advice to people who always say there's nothing we can do would be to think of something to do. And what I think is, don't leave gun laws in the hands of liberals. I think gun owners, gun aficionados should be the ones who are pressing for change because, as you've said, bad gun ownership looks bad on you. I don't know about guns like you do. I have said things like, we need to get rid of AR-15s. We need to get rid of this. And if it were up to liberals like me in Congress, that could cause some damage to responsible gun owners like you. So that would be my solution, is for the right to go into Congress, fight for their own gun control and their own rights. But then, of course, you have the people that are like, well, it can't be limited because it's the Second Amendment. But we're not talking about those people. So that was my opinion, that I think pro-gunners should be advocating for change and gun control so that it's handled in a way that everyone is happy.
Yeah, the only problem with some of that stuff is that you can advocate yourself out of owning a weapon that you legally possess now. And that's where I think a lot of pro-gun people tend to be a little hesitant, like for me. You know, obviously I want to see the stop of mass shootings and all of that stuff and illegal guns and that kind of thing. But I also don't want to hurt my ability to go do the things that I really love and enjoy and that I'm super passionate about. You know, the day that they would take those things away from me is just, I just would be lost as a person. It's who I am.
And I do want to add a little plug here that I think we all operate under some irrational fears. I don't think guns are going anywhere in this country. So, I mean, if you're a right leaner listening in, I don't think your gun rights are going anywhere. You know, people are like, Christianity's under attack. Christianity's not going anywhere. So I think we should just have some of these discussions more and calm each other's fear. You know, I would trust you with my life, and you are a gun owner. So the next topic I want to talk about, and it's something that I really admire about you, and you've mentioned this already, you really make sure you take time to read up on issues before debating them. Sometimes you catch me off guard because by the time you approach me with the debate topic, I am not as caught up as you are. You're like, I have all the information, let's debate. I can admit you have definitely informed me of some things that I was not aware of on issues that I myself was defending. So I wanted to talk about the Don't Say Gay bill in Florida, and I'll let you talk a little bit about it and what issues this has created.
Yeah, let's start off by calling it the Parental Rights and Education Bill. You know, its proper name. Unfortunately, it got slapped with a misnomer. When you read through the bill, you know, a lot of people tend to pick out what they don't like immediately. I think, personally, for me, I hate the fact that we have to have a bill that says that we can't talk about sexuality and that kind of thing.
Well, let's back up. What does the bill say?
So the bill's overview basically states that we cannot have curriculum in grades K through 3 around sexual orientation or sexual identity.
Gender identity, I think it says. So that the whole thing is, it does not say gay one time in that bill.
Nope.
But the language it does use is sexual orientation and gender identity. And Florida has made it illegal to have those discussions with kids K through 3rd. But there's also, 4 through 12, that the content has to be age appropriate. So that's the bill. It's not that we agree with, well, you know, we agree that you should not be teaching K through 3rd graders about sex, right?
Correct.
Period. And we may not agree with the bill, but the language and the mistitle that it has been given is so important to you. And why don't you tell me a little bit about why and what kind of misinformation, misleading titles like that create?
Yeah, a lot of it is the fact that people believe everything they read on the internet. They believe that the headline is the only thing that matters. The content doesn't matter.
And people will see Don't Say Gay bill, and they will not read the bill, and that will be all that they see.
Correct. And they don't read the different sides of that bill. It doesn't specifically call out the LGBTQ community. So if they're teaching a straight agenda in the curriculum, that is technically illegal per the bill. It's about sexual orientation and gender identity. If you're teaching that type of stuff, it's technically not legal.
And that's what I said to you. I'm like, well, I don't care what you have to say, Danielle. I still don't agree with the bill. And you were like, well, because I said, you know, if you show a Disney movie, you can argue that as pushing this agenda. And you said, yeah, according to the bill, someone can challenge that in court if they feel like a straight agenda is being pushed, you know. So it's double-sided. So you open my eyes to like, oh, well, they kind of dug themselves in a hole a little bit. And one criticism we both had of the law is, how vague the language is, what is age appropriate, and all that kind of stuff. So just to wrap up the discussion of this bill, we're not saying we agree with it, even the official name of the bill, but we worry that if people only see a small glimpse, they're not going to do additional research and even find loopholes, like you said, about if they felt a straight agenda was being pushed, they can challenge it. In our discussions, we've reached the conclusion that the law is stupid, but in your opinion, what impact does mislabeling a law have on legislation?
Yeah, so many people believe titles and article titles and everything like that. And as far as like nicknames and stuff, they don't even read the bill. They read the nickname, they read the title of the article, and they don't read the actual content. And this happens a lot even outside of the political world. Recently, I read an article about a political official in Montana who recently shot a wolf. Perfectly legal there. The headline of the article was, "So-and-so shoots Yellowstone wolf," and just ends right there. So you would think, oh my God, wolves are protected in Yellowstone, like he shot a wolf, like it's super illegal. Not the case. The only reason they called it a Yellowstone wolf is because they inferred that its time out in the wild, it happened to be in Yellowstone at one point or another. The person did not shoot it in Yellowstone and everything like that. So until you read the article, you think, oh my God, this guy's a monster. Like he's illegal. It's terrible. But really, when you read it, everything was by the books.
I've also seen people share articles. So-and-so died in a tragic highway accident. This is terrible. We need to do something about it. And it was from 5 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen that a lot too. So people just read headlines. And again, we're two people who don't agree with this bill, but by doing more reading, that has empowered us who are against it and can do more about it because we know more. So maybe by saying, don't say gay bill, you as a person who disagrees with it can be limiting yourself and your options and your knowledge. So this is kind of a big question. What effect does social media have on politics?
Honestly, I truly believe that social media has been the worst thing to happen to society as a whole, and especially regarding politics. Although it does have some benefits, it can be extremely inaccurate. And it's also really easy to use social media to project scare tactics and scare people into believing a certain viewpoint. For example, you see a lot of recordings of crimes happening or people getting beat up and that kind of stuff, and it completely shows it out of context. You see people getting, tackled to the ground by the police and whatnot, but you don't realize that 20 minutes before that video started, the guy was harassing someone with a knife. You're only seeing little tidbits of things and instances, and that is used to scare people into believing that, all police are bad or all people that do this are bad just because you're watching one little snippet of one little video on the internet.
Right, and a lot of times that stuff is shared by people who you only see the clip they want you to see. But also, what I wanted to say about social media and politics is that it's such a shorthand way to communicate politics, like memes. The sharing of political memes where parents on Facebook take them as gospel drives me nuts, and share videos. And it's like, what they're saying is not true. Your quest for knowledge begins and ends at sharing that meme. I think it creates a lot of empty activism when you're fighting for rights. People just retweet a tweet and that's it. That's their activism.
I did my part.
Right. I changed my profile picture to Ukraine colors. I did my part. And that's a kind of world that I don't like. It feels like a Black Mirror episode where everyone feels like they're doing something and nothing is being done. And social media kind of empowers that. And like I said, so, the memes really bother me that are just not true or inaccurate, and all these people are like, yeah, so true, I'm so with you, but that's just not the case.
Yeah, and what you're saying about, changing your profile picture, like frame to support this and that, people that don't do that tend to get hated on.
You're right.
Which is so sad because I shouldn't have to change my profile picture to know that I don't support killing people or that. I had a conversation with one of my friends the other day who he's actually a therapist, and he was talking about how one of his clients came into his office and handed him an LGBTQ flag and said, "You have to hang this." And he was like, well, no, I don't have to. And she went off on him. You don't support me. You don't support this, yada, yada, yada. And you know, it just scared me so much to think that the support and the not support draws a line at a flag. Like, you shouldn't have to fly a flag to just not, like, to support something. Like, it just scares me that, you know, I don't walk down the road and say, oh, that person does not have a rainbow on.
Right.
They don't love me. Like, you know, I don't see that. But some people do, and that's so, so, so scary.
And that creates expectations for people that are not feasible. And you know, maybe I don't want to change my profile picture because I'm like, that is such limited, silly activism. I'd much rather be well read and educated on an issue than change my profile picture and call it a day.
Exactly. Like, I'd rather be able to back up, you know, my opinions with facts and show them that I know what I'm talking about versus blindly hanging something in my front yard. Like, I don't drive by houses and see people that don't have certain flags out or whatever, that they are against that completely and want to murder everyone that's, you know, not a part of that community.
On the other hand, I will say that if I see a rainbow flag, that does create good feelings. If I see it on a business door or in a business window, I know for sure that I am supported in there. Does that mean I immediately feel not supported when I walk into Walmart? No. Exactly. You know what I mean? The flag is a nice touch and I appreciate it, but it's not, like you said,
it's not necessary.
You want me to die.
Yeah, exactly. You know? People that don't do that, it doesn't mean they're against me or against you or against anybody. And I just think it creates more divide.
Yeah, and it turns really complicated political issues and puts them in a box, like a small, easy package that you just share and like, and that's all the information you're going to get on
and
it.
it's easy to do that, and that's why it happens.
Right.
But honestly, it's not correct.
And actually, my next point was hollow activism of tweets and retweets, and we kind of already touched on that, where you feel your activism begins and ends with a retweet. But I didn't even think about your point. You don't necessarily have to be active on social media to
be an activist.
Right. And people may come for you if you are not active on social media.
Yeah, or if you're too active on social media, you're, you know, a bad person. But if you're not active enough on social media, you're also a bad person. And that is a completely ridiculous standard to be holding people to.
So my next question is, what are some common misconceptions of Republicans that you would like to address for uneasy listeners?
Yeah, I think a lot of people decide when they hear the word Republican, they think of the old school, like, old white men, Republican, like, political figures that, you know, they don't like LGBTQ community. They're all anti-abortion. They're all this, they're all that. But honestly, I obviously am for the LGBTQ community. My viewpoints on abortion are completely different than most of, you know, the parties. And some of the most wholesome, generous people that I know are super conservative. They don't care about how you live your life. They just want to live theirs in a peaceful, easy, affordable way. And I think that a lot of people look at Republicans as if they're just trying to take away rights. But really, I think the community of Republicans and conservatives just want a better, like,
America.
Yeah.
And I said that at the beginning of this episode, where I kind of view things as less Democratic and Republican now and more pro-rights and against human rights, you know. So I don't know, misconceptions about Democrats.
A lot of the ones that you hear now is the snowflake argument, that they're so sensitive.
You're right.
And, you know, they just whine about everything.
Yes.
And yes, there's people that do that, but there's also Republicans that act the way that they're stereotypically
I always
supposed
joke,
to act.
say happy holidays to a Republican and that kind of thing. So yeah, the snowflake thing I definitely think goes both ways. Oh, I have a good one. Maybe we have too many labels and we're trying to deconstruct norms. We're trying to get rid of men and women to make way for all these other things. And all I can say in shorthand is that is simply not true. My viewpoint, and I will say as one of the only open LGBTQ faculty at my school, a lot of people come to me with questions about all facets of the spectrum. Like, oh, I have a trans student and I don't know how to do this. What do I do? And I say, ask them. I'm not trans, right? I'm gay, so I can't answer those questions. So,
but I will give you props that you handle those situations very well. And I think that's why people come to you. They feel comfortable talking to you about the topic, knowing that you're an activist
Yeah,
for
yeah,
those
yeah.
people. Like, I know I come to you, I still have questions about the LGBT
Right,
community,
and
and I come straight to you because I know that you'll explain them in a way that I can understand, and that is respectful for me to think about those things in the future. And I really appreciate having an outlet to be able to ask those questions
Well,
to.
thank you. And I don't want anyone to think listening to that I don't want the questions, but sometimes it's like, don't just come to me because I'm the point person. Like, have that conversation with that student. But absolutely, I'm so happy to be that person, and I want people to feel comfortable coming to me. What I wanted to say was that, Democrat misconception that we're trying to debase the Lords, Adam and Eve, and all that kind of stuff is there are so many identities that I don't understand. And I will say, and I talk about this in my psychology class, I think it's funny for a group of people that don't want labels. We keep coming up with more labels. I cannot follow the labels. All I can do is respect an individual when they tell me they identify a certain way. I say, okay. In my opinion, it is not for me to question or change. I take people as they are. But for the most part, I would say nobody on the left is coming to you and telling you, Danielle, cannot identify as a woman anymore. It's just people are finding what fits for them. That's them. They're living their life. I respect them. It's not going to affect me if they identify
That's
as
what
a
I'm
new
saying.
label.
I know a lot of people on the Republican side too that are like, I don't really care what you do, how you identify, just live your life and don't shove it down everybody's throat.
Right.
And I feel the same way about, anybody. Like,
Right.
if you have, for example, if you like a particular sports team and you're shoving that down my throat,
Right.
I am not going to like you. Like,
Right.
sorry. Like, that is so...
What do you mean you don't like
Yeah, exactly.
the Green Bay Packers?
Exactly. Like, you don't have to be that blunt about things. Like, you just... If they disagree with you, they disagree with you.
Right.
Educate them the best you can and move on with your life.
So my next question is, a lot of people are apprehensive about Republicans. What would you say to someone who doesn't feel welcome in the Republican Party because maybe they feel they're anti-minority, anti-LGBTQ, anti-woman, and maybe religious? I think that's something that we haven't talked about this episode, but a lot of conservative ideals are backed by religion. That is not the case for you.
No.
So if someone is apprehensive about joining a Republican space, what can you tell them to kind of ease their worries?
I think there is much more to the Republican realm than just those people that are anti this, anti that. I want to take everything away from you. Like, there's those people on both sides, and you have to find the people that you agree with. There are people that are gonna, like, for example, you and I, we disagree with a lot of things, but when it comes to, like, your rights, I care for them. When it comes to my rights, you care for mine, like, regardless of our differences. So you have to find those people that break that mold. Don't identify with the people that you're hearing spew things on social media. Identify with the people that are quiet about it.
You just brought up a good point. I'm not going to search out Republicans that are anti-gay and anti-black and I'm going to search out Republicans that are pro those things, right?
Yeah.
So like you said, you kind of have to be smart about who you're seeking out.
Yeah, and I know we've talked about this a little earlier too. With the gun argument, like, the left is not taking away your guns. Like, we need to, like, that type of thing. And I think we can say the same for the Republican Party. There are a lot of supporters that, you might have one or two officials that don't like that, but they're going to get outvoted. They're going to get turned away, that type of thing. And I would tell them to look at their life throughout the last presidential election with a Republican in office and think, like, to yourself, did your life change dramatically during that time period? Otherwise, talking about feelings and that kind of thing, that's a different subject. But the way you lived and all of your rights, did they go away as an American? Like, leave all that other stuff behind and think about, like, were you persecuted against? Were stones thrown at you? Those types of things you got to look at. And did it change drastically because of the Republicans, or did it change drastically because of the arguments between the two parties during that period? The strong anti-culture of Republicans are definitely not the majority in my eyes. Most of them are not really concerned how you live your life. It's okay to not agree with people and keep your feelings and your lifestyle the same, and you take it on a case-by-case basis. Some people are going to be anti, some people aren't.
My question is, what if, to answer your question about were you persecuted, what if their answer is yes?
That's your case-by-case basis then.
Right.
If you were, then you definitely have the right to not like that group. Like, that's just something that you have to see. And the same thing goes vice versa. A lot of people don't like certain things that the left has done versus the right has done, and that's where you get your party divide. But I think there's definitely this middle ground of people that aren't all the way Republican and aren't all the way Democrat. And those are the people that need to unite.
We have come to our final question. For those listening who may be struggling with people with different political beliefs in their life, what advice would you give friends or family struggling with presidential and other politics based on what you learned from our friendship?
The biggest piece of advice I can give is to learn how to listen to someone that has a difference in opinion from you. Try not to interrupt. Try not to get too emotional when they're speaking. Let the people speak, and then finish your side of the story afterwards. I know we've had multiple discussions where we're both trying to talk over each other and say, but this, but that, but this. And we've learned, I think, now to let the person talk. Even when we're texting and stuff, I can see the pause between us to let the person get their thoughts out and listen to them. And I like to spin it as a question coming back to you. Like, why do you think this? Why do you think that? Always be asking questions. And that's how you understand how the person thinks and how they work. And you've really shown me a lot about who you are as a person and how passionate you are about certain viewpoints. And you showed me that I should be a little bit more passionate, I think, in some senses. I should care about certain issues a little bit more than I do. And I hope I've done the same for you. But I really feel like I can say anything to you. Like, honestly, I know that our friendship is safe from the political world. And that's huge. You need to have those people in your life. You need to have the people that you can go to, you can talk to them about anything, and know that you guys can go get ice cream after and hang out and be friends and, that kind of thing. So despite our differences, whatever happens to us, I know at the end of the day that if I call you up and I need something, you're not going to be like, well, she said this on the phone to me the other day and I don't agree with it, so I'm not going to help her.
I just want to say to listeners that Denyel and I have not had our last fight about politics.
Never.
That's just kind of our friendship, but we do always find a way back. I think the advice I would give is that you genuinely care about the person, like you said, that you know they have your back at the end of the day.
And you know that I don't agree with people getting persecuted for
Right.
these things. I've been very vocal about, how I feel towards certain people and certain events and that kind of thing. And like, if you're not a crappy person, I like you. But
Right.
if you're a crappy person, I don't care what political party you're on, I'm not gonna
Like you're a
like
crappy
you.
person.
Yeah.
And you feel, a lot of us feel a lot of political pressure, especially since 2016, that weighs on our shoulders. And at the end of the day, Denyel is not contributing to that pressure on my shoulders. She is not part of this burden that I'm carrying, and she can help me lift the burden. So when it comes down to it, if you care about someone enough, and you know what, if you're in a situation at home where you come out as gay and your parents disown you on Republican or religious basis, you have every right to handle that relationship how you want to handle that relationship.
Yeah, we're not forcing you
right.
into talking to
I'm
these
not
people.
saying like keep this person in your life, but there are people in your life that are worth more than politics and that are not worth losing. And Denyel is one of those people for me. It is not worth it for me to lose her as a friend over a vote. Because when you talk to people and you get to know people and I learn why she's voting for people, she's not voting for people because she wants women to be discriminated against or gay people to be discriminated against. That is not part of her agenda. So when you kind of separate that from your misconceptions and what that person actually stands for and what that person is actually trying to achieve, I think you can think a little bit more clearly.
Another thing is to be super honest with that person that you're talking about. Like, there will be days where I want to start a political conversation. You're like, I'm just not having it today. Like, can we do this another day?
I call Denyel like the debate assassin.
Yeah, I am. I snipe you with debates all the time.
Right. And you get me mad because you sometimes argue what you don't agree with.
I do like to play devil's advocate.
You play devil's advocate, and that makes me upset because I'm like, you're arguing with this thing you don't even agree with.
But I'm doing my job. Especially if you can't tell that I don't agree with it, I'm doing my job.
Right. The next thing I was going to say is you need people in your life who push and challenge you to grow and do better. You don't want to surround yourself with yes men. Everything you do, the person agrees with every step of the way. You want people in your life who are going to challenge you. And like I said, at the end of the day, Denyel means more to me than any political discussion.
Absolutely.
So that's kind of why we wanted to do this episode. We are two people with differing political beliefs who maintain a very close friendship, who are always there for each other at the end of the day. We wanted to do this for listeners who are struggling with similar situations, how to keep that person in your life if they're worth it, if they treat you well, if they're a good person. And Denyel, thank you for joining me.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. This was super fun. I am absolutely 100% so proud of you for doing this. I think it's a big step, especially with such a controversial topic for this episode, that you invited me on and are willing to have me speak my mind. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you for joining us for this episode of Exa Talks, and we will see you next time.
We did it.